भी मिलता है. Yes. Good evening, Subir. Today we will be talking about inventory management, which is a very important subject in operations management. And I had sent you a case. I only choose very small cases, which are live cases. Have you gone through it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the idea is more than anything, you will get the feel of so that these are things which are actually happening, Otherwise, so we tend to think that it is only for the textbooks and things like that. When I used to take some courses in the management colleges, I used to take them to the factories and show them how things like this two-bin system or something work actually. So only when you see, you can believe. But in such cases, at least a case study like that, this will help. So we'll wait for 1 more minute, because you should tell your people join at least 5 minutes earlier. Then we can start on time. I have logged almost 10 minutes earlier. Did you have a chance to go through the YouTube, Anshaj, afterward? Last class? TQM?
No, sir, I didn't go through it.
Anytime you have, at least you have the YouTube, so you can go through it. And I'll be very happy if you guys ask questions, because we have created a WhatsApp group. So we should, if you don't understand something, or you want to clarify something, or something in relation to the actual situation in your place of work, which you want to relate and get clarified, you should do that. Put it on the WhatsApp, and it will benefit others also. Correct. So it's not only for. I will now start the screen share. So as I told you, we'll be doing inventory management within our operations management course. Of course, we always say that, this subject is very important, and which is not important. But there is a direct implication when it comes to inventory management. Before I start the details of inventory management, I'll try to explain why it is important. Any operations, and more so manufacturing operations, has a lot of material involved in the process from start to finish. And all these are either purchased or semi-processed, or processed and waiting for it to be shipped to the customer. Which means you have put in money for all these materials. In the working process, you have put machine time, labor time, electricity, and other costs, which gets added into that. And in finished goods, again, everything else, including packing and storage, everything costs money. Right. Now, who pays for all this? Usually what happens is that the management has some arrangement with some banks, because it is, unless you're very cash rich, where you're able to provide for the funds required for inventory yourself, you ask for what is called as a working capital loan from the bank, and the bank gives you that loan at a certain rate of interest, which can be anywhere today from 12 to 15%, let's say. So that, which means that the amount you have invested in inventory is incurring costs. And usually in working capital, you only draw that much as you want. You don't draw the full amount. Correct. So the lesser you draw, the lesser is the cost. So inventory has a direct implication on the cost of a product and cost of operations. Secondly, it is also directly related to the cash flow in a business. The more your cash is blocked in inventory, the again your operations become difficult. So if you want to be lean, then you have to ensure that you release as much cash from inventory for other purposes of the organization. So if we saw in our very initial talk, we said that profit in an organization is actually generated from the operations, because the price of the product is fixed, and it is because it is what the customer is willing to pay. So he won't pay you more. Your raw materials and other materials which you purchase are again fixed, because you will not be able to get very much concession from there. So with both the costs, the revenue as well as the cost fixed, what is left is only the process, which is the operations. And in operations, a good portion, depending upon the type of operations, it can be anywhere from 40% to even 75%, depending on the type of finished goods. Typically, like in a car, as you say, it could be the total inventory, rather raw material cost will be of the order of almost raw material and others which go into the process. Other than, of course, salaries and labor and human resources will go up to almost 40%. So even a saving of 5-10% there means a lot of my amount saved in both in cash flow as well as the costs. So that is why inventory management is very, very important. Subir Sab, you can mute. I think there is some background sound is coming. Yes, right. Now, what are the different types of inventories? Because when we talk about inventories, you should know where are all the inventories lying in an organization. Before that, we will just define what is an inventory. There are various definitions, but this is a very simple definition. It is the amount of goods and materials owned by a company at a particular time, including parts, products being made, like in working process, and finished goods. So it is the raw materials, work in process, and finished goods lying at various places in an organization put together forms the inventory of the organization, for which the organization has committed, rather paid or committed to pay. Right. So this is what is an inventory. It consists of raw materials and purchased parts. Raw materials like if you take the example of a car, what you say that it could be the steel and many other things, which the basic raw materials. When you say purchased parts, in the sense that or a component, means that a component is something which it directly goes into the assembly of the thing without changing its form, right? So that is a component. And like in cars, they don't make most of them do not make the engine, they don't make the clutch assembly or something like that. And there are many parts, even brake shoes, all that is all bought out. Many parts in the thing are bought out as a component and fitted during an assembly stage at different stages of the assembly. So you have the raw materials, you have the purchase parts or components, and the, during the various stages of manufacturing, you have at any given point of time, any given point of time, there is partially completed goods, which is called as work in progress. It is also called as work in process, or WIP in short. Finished goods inventory. Finished goods inventory is that once you have completed the item of manufacturing, it gets into a finished goods area or a storage or whatever it is, and it is waiting to be transported to the customer directly or through a channel of distribution. As long as the finished goods does not reach the customer and he has taken delivery of it, till then the inventory belongs to you. You have to take into account that it is yours. The moment it reaches and he takes charge of it, it is like in a car, let us say. The finished goods cars are lying in a yard, usually in those huge open yards it lie. And it is transported either in trucks or in train to the various distributors across the country. Now, if it is transported by, let us say, the distributor's truck, and which means an invoice is made at the time of loading the truck, then the moment it is invoiced and loaded into the truck, then the goods belong to the distributor. But suppose, let us say, you are transporting this to a different city, and from there you are invoicing it to the customer. Because, of course, now the VAT system has come. Before that, the state taxes used to be different. So, they used to have depots all over the country. So the goods lying in all those depots is also your inventory. So till such time as it is invoiced to a customer in the channel, till then the goods belong to you and that is your inventory. Okay. So like as we say, it's in very simple words, the moment it is invoiced, the goods is his and the money is ours. Of course, you may not pay immediately. You may pay 30 days, 45 days, whatever it is. But then that money is taken into account into our books as a debtor. And the goods, the title of the goods goes to the customer. So till then, the inventory remains with the company. Now, we have, during the process of manufacture, we need many things like cooling liquids. It could be many other different types of consumables which are used. That is also an inventory. Then in many cases, you need packing material, either during the process of manufacturing itself or after the goods are manufactured. Like, let us say, there is a shampoo or a soap is being manufactured. Even for that matter, milk today, it comes in sachets. The sachet material is a packing material, but it gets processed while in the assembly line itself. or when something is put in bottles, that bottle is a packing material. Then for the machineries, equipments, and many of the processes, you may need jigs, fixtures, tools, spare parts, which have to be replaced periodically, and many other type of supplies. So these are also inventory. And goods in transit to warehouses or customers, as I told you, till it reaches a customer or it is invoiced to the customer, till then it is an inventory. What does inventory, what is the function of an inventory, and how does it help the operations? See, one is to meet anticipatory customer demand. In many goods of mostly, if you take examples of consumer goods or consumer durables, or many goods which are even consumer goods also, like packaged food items, you the process of manufacture or something does not take place after a person places an order. It may be so in case of, like, if you're buying a pizza, okay, let's say they don't make a pizza and keep ready. The moment there is an order, then the components of the pizza are put together and then prepared in an oven, packed and then sent to you. Till then, for to make that happen, then obviously they will have to anticipate a certain different type demand for different types of bases, let us say, different types of seasonings, different types of toppings, what you need to put, and then keep inventory of those things. They can't go to the market to go and buy, right? So jokingly, I remember when I was in college, there used to be a guy, tea shop fellow. Once he took a lot of time to bring tea. So one of my friends asked jokingly, क्या नीलगिरी गया था चाय लेने के लिए? Right? Nilgiri is our Ooty, where the tea. You don't go to buy tea leaves when somebody places an order for tea. You have an anticipatory demand and keep different time. So there is an anticipatory consumer demand. To smooth production requirements, see, many of the goods have certain seasonal variations. Like, even if you take in India, if you see, whenever there are festival seasons, the consumer demand goes up. The demand for, let us say, woolen clothing goes up during winter. Swimwear may go up during summer. Cotton during summer again. There are different areas, like there are certain goods people buy mostly during the months of January, February, or March. In fact, more for tax saving and other things, So the demand becomes seasonal, and this season is known. You see, after all, if you see the pattern of selling going on outside, you'll say the same shopkeeper, the moment the season is about to change, his entire shop will have a different look, different types of things will be stocked. So he knows what are seasonal and he stocks according to those seasons. Like, for example, even crackers. Crackers are sold why? Only during Deepavali. And maybe for a few festivals in South, we have some other festival which happens 1 month after Deepavali, sometimes during New Year's Day, and other small demands come up only during wedding season and things like that. So, but these are anticipated, and then you need to use stock accordingly. To decouple operations, create inventory buffers to preempt breakdowns, interruptions in supply, etc. Of course, in India, we have a lot of the problems can be internal in operations due to machinery, or mostly related to machinery, where you have a very crucial or a important machine. There can be a breakdown, and then to get that rectified may take a day or maybe even a couple of days. You need a specialist to come. Now, when that happens, suppose this is the process number 3. So the process 4, and let us say there are 5 processes to be on a very simple thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So processes 4 and 5 will not happen, or at least it will stop after some time, as long as they have a buffer stock available for processing for 4 and 5. Now, if they don't have the buffer, then the whole thing comes to a standstill. Only 1 and 2 will be producing. It will get accumulated for the process number 3 to take place. So to decouple operations, you keep inventory buffers. And sometimes what happens is these inventory buffers, you may even outsource or buy sometimes in case when there is a problem like this. To protect against stockouts, that happens in mostly in finished goods, that there is a sudden huge demand. Like during COVID, you see many of the things were suddenly out of shelf. And if sometimes it is not easy to forecast these kind of things, but then people keep a close watch and work out what are the things which can get into this kind of a stockout situation, and then be prepared for them, either from the raw materials itself or in this one. So like in one of the cases where I know that a item which was being supplied by one of our suppliers, he told me that there is a lot of disturbances in their industrial area, labor disturbances. So we obviously know that, usually these things affect almost everybody. So we told him that although it's a class A item and we cannot stock too much, but we told him that you produce on our behalf this much and at least keep it in a separate warehouse away from that place. So there are many such situations which happen. To take advantage of order cycles, because many a times, especially if the product which is being supplied to you itself is time consuming, as a production cycle, long production cycle, and it is produced batch produced, then you may run into a situation where the you may not get delivery of those goods for certain periods. So ensure that you buy during the peak of that person's production. To hedge against price increases. You see, mostly all metals especially, and many products, they are dependent upon the not only Indian, but international prices. See, especially when it comes to the steel and many things, London Metal Exchange is very important. People keep track of those kind of things to see what is the trend which is going on. Like copper is in some mines in South America. So there are many places from where, if there are any disturbances, could be cyclones due to or any other natural disasters or due to shipping. If you know, some time back, if you at least I think 6 or 8 months back, the Suez Canal was blocked due to one ship got stuck, the entire supply chain, which in fact a sizable number of goods passes through the Suez Canal across from that side to this side. So these kind of things create disturbances in the supply chain, and it increases the cost because the logistics partner will not take the cost on himself. So obviously it will be passed on to the next person and creates price increases, and that will have a ripple effect on other products too. So these price increases, you keep track especially of your inputs material to permit operations to run smoothly and to take advantage of quantity discounts. See, basically, sometimes what happens is people also have either surplus stock, or they offer you that if you, instead of buying 5, if you buy 10, I'll be able to give you an additional 10% discount. Now, many a times you take such offers, not because it may be that the cost of finance is lower than the cost, the discount is offered. So many people, many of your vendors sometimes do give offers because they have excess stock with them. You see, inventory and supply chain management. Obviously, an inventory is a part of the entire supply chain. Now, to put it simply, what do you understand by supply chain? You can just unmute with Anshaj and Subir. What do you understand by supply chain? Anshaj.
Sir, the sir the sir like you've heard of food chain, right?
Yeah.
It's similar to
Correct.
that.
Yeah.
The raw materials produced are extracted and
Yeah.
bought or processed, and then later they are sent to the production facility or the manufacturing facility, where they're converted into semi-finished and finished goods, or for further
Yeah. See,
so that
basically, a supplier chain, in the easiest definition of a supply chain is that if you are the processor, let us say, you're a processor of you are a supplier, you are a supplier, you are a supplier. Let's say we go 5 stages back to the basic material. Now, let's go forward. Suppose you are manufacturer of, let us say, tires. Now, the tires by themselves are not consumed. So they are consumed by a vehicle manufacturer. A vehicle manufacturer sells it to a transport operator. Right? Like that. So similarly, from supplier to a customer's customer. So this entire chain is what is called as a supply chain. It is like in a supply chain, let us say if one of the processes is defective, it will have a great effort on these, let us say, customer kind of thing. See, we found that during this COVID, okay, during this COVID, if many of you would have observed, people did not go out much. They did not use their footwear. And many of the footwear start getting crumbled. वो पापड़ जैसा हो जाता है. Now, these are actually cheap ones. It won't happen to, let's say, brands like Crocs or any of the higher brands, which Nike or some of them. Now, the reason behind it is that some of these local brands, they use cheaper material. That cheaper material is again processed by somebody who is using again the cheaper chemicals, cheaper whatever inputs to make that, and they are not processed enough for getting a reliable long-lasting product. Correct. Now, when you buy and when you use initially, you may not find any difference. But any of the plastics, especially, they need to be used to be functional. And this problem I found, in fact, one of my own cobblers, when I went to him with one of my shoes, he was telling that this is what happened. Most people do not know. Same is the case with plastics, case with many of them goods. So the supply chain is very important. That is why when I am making some goods, like I myself, we are manufacturers of electronic components called metal film resistors. Now our component goes into sub-assembly manufacturers. From there it goes to the other, the main product manufacturers. Now you can say, why should a product manufacturer be bothered about what kind of a component a person is used, the sub-assembly manufacturer, and then so on? Because for me, again, I have, let us say, 5 important components. Now, if one of the items in that component has a problem like what I told you about this, it is going to affect the end use customer. And let us say that is in a medical equipment, which is being used in an operation theater, let us say. And because of the non-reliability of the component, a supplier supplying to me, supplied to me, creates a defect in the use while the usage of that particular product. Now that may cost somebody's life. Or if you're driving a vehicle and then that suddenly starts misbehaving or doing something, then it again can lead to life. So the consequences of bad quality, like when we talked about again quality management, has an effect right from the beginning stage of thing. And that is why supply chain is very important. We ourselves, I have personally validated every single of my suppliers, taking into account what materials he uses and how consistently he uses and what is the traceability of the different materials which he uses. Because only then I can have a reliable raw material or a component supplied to me for manufacturing my goods. Now, that is why in inventory management, supply chain, that is why today no longer we call it as a purchase management, we call it as supply chain management. Correct. Now, the demand has what is called as a bullwhip effect. See what happens. What is a bullwhip effect? If you see, Jatka wala, he does that. No, he does that. It's not. It doesn't end with the first ripple. It goes and then keeps going into waves till it goes to the end. Now, let us say it is the other way around. Like, let us say there is going to be a demand on the other end. Now, the retailer, the wholesaler gets the information from the retailer. The retailer says, my next month's demand for this particular product will, let us say, go from 10 to 20. Now, the distributor says, no, I want to play safe. What if this, I would rather tell the next person that my demand is likely to go from, instead of saying 10 to 20, I'll say 25. And by the time it reaches, let us say, the point at which the decision is to be taken, for all you know, this 10 would have gone to 30. And the similar thing happens when you tell your people to supply components, raw materials and components. The supply chain manager or the purchase manager, as we call, he will also probably try to probably feel, be safe. Instead of buying 30, let me provide for, let us say, 35. Correct. So now the bullwhip has gone from 10 to 35, whereas actual demand increase was only 10. So demand information gets distorted as it moves away from the end use and going backward. Higher safety stock inventories are to be stored to compensate. The reverse can also happen. The reverse can happen when there is a contraction in demand, and that gets amplified to a very large contraction when it comes to the supply side. Seasonal and cyclical demand. Cyclical is how is it different from seasonal? Seasonal, of course, is not periodic in that sense. It can happen once or twice. Cyclical is having or more or less the same, you can say. Inventory provides independence from vendors. Basically, what happens is you're not fully dependent on the vendor at all the time. Although, of course, contrary to this statement, when it comes to just-in-time management, we'll be talking the other way around. That, and we talked about the Deming cycle, where he says that you have to trust your vendors. I generally, personally feel that you must strike a balance between the two. That unless you have created a very good rapport with your vendors, then you need not carry very high inventories. That is the wire media in actual practice. Take advantage of price discounts, of course, which are usually offered by vendors when they have excess stock and things like that. Or they want to, for purposes of cash flow, they want to liquidate their stocks. Many things are possible. Inventory provides independence between stages and avoids work stoppages. As I said, if let us say there are 5 processes, at each process, if I have, let us say, at least one shift of material available, so even in case that there is something going wrong in the previous process, the next process will not get disturbed. So the buffer is always built up in many cases. Now, we need to understand demand. There are 2 types of demand. One is a dependent demand and one is the independent demand. Dependent demand are items used to produce final products. Now, why is it called dependent? In the sense that usually we have seen that in the master production schedule, you have already identified how much to produce of what items, and there is a certain production schedule given to the shop floor to produce. So the shop floor has no other options but to produce those quantities. So what items that are needed for production of those are also clearly known. So the demand for all those items which from the suppliers to the stores to work in process, they're all dependent on the demand which is already been projected. It's as simple as that. Here he gives an example of tires which are stored in a Goodyear plant. Dependent, because these tires, how much to produce was already given by the master production schedule and the marketing department to them. So they are not bothered about what happens after it is produced. It is for these people to again transport it, sell it, and all that based on the demand which is there. So as far as the manufacturing unit is concerned, this was a dependent demand, and we have produced as per the demand which was projected. In case of the independent demand, is demand for items used by external customers. Now, there the variations can happen due to many reasons, and there could be either a very high sudden demand happening, or there could be a stoppage or a, due to government regulations, can be due to many other things, the reasons like cars, appliances, computers, house. Computers, actually the demand went up during our lockdown period because everybody had to work from home, even the school students were doing online working. Mobiles, smart mobiles and computers, all that went up. Cars actually came down initially, but actually, I'll tell you, there was a funny situation where I was used to say that people did not want to use mass transport system during this COVID period because obviously the risk of getting getting the virus transmitted. So I would rather use my own vehicle and drive, although it's going to be expensive. Correct. So the car sales did not actually see a very sharp drop, uh, especially from the working population. Okay. There are various appliances, again, household goods demand did go up in some of them. So they, in this situation, similarly, there are very different situations in which the demand for these things are independent, and so hence the inventory is also called independent demand. Why do we do inventory control? See, the objectives, why do you do? One is to achieve satisfactory levels of customer service. See, no, you can never satisfy 100%. See, even when very have popular items which you order, there are many times there are stockouts, and they'll say we'll notify you as soon as it is back. Okay, you don't like it. Sometimes you move to a different channel from where you can buy, or you to an alternate product or an alternate brand. That means you lose a customer, right? At the same time, then you have a high inventory of course, and then technology changes, the customers, the competition comes up with better products. You are stuck with inventories, and then you have to liquidate them. So there is a certain level at which you have to say, yes, this much can be done to achieve a satisfactory levels of customer service while keeping inventory costs within a reasonable bounds. Again, if you have very good buffers at every place, when some, the product itself changes, you may be stuck with non-moving or bad inventory. That means that adds to the cost of your operations. So everywhere there is a reasonable level which you will have to come up with. Either it relates to a customer service or inventories. The two main concerns are level of customer service, which means to have the right goods in sufficient quantities at the right time. See, the customer is bothered with only four things: quality, cost, delivery, and service. Delivery means again time, timely delivery. Keep that in mind in operations. QCDS, quality, cost, delivery, and service. If he gets all this, then that means he is satisfied. So the level of customer service to have the right goods in sufficient quantities at the right time. The other constraint in inventory control is the cost of ordering and carrying inventories. Unless you have standing orders, which normally, of course, you don't do, because then you'll have to keep monitoring in any case. So there is a certain cost to ordering, right from your own internal operations to having the order reach the vendor to the time when you get the inventory at your place, and then that which is again, as I told you, you could pay for those inventories from your own resources or from your bank limits. So either of which costs money. So which brings us to the very important uh, terminology, which what we call as the inventory turnover. If you have read the case what was given to you today, if you see that company initially had almost a 1:1, 1:1.4 or something in the first year of operation, and by the third year of operation, it went up to 1:3 point something. Obviously, that 1:3 point is better than 1:1. Now, what is the correct level of inventory turnover? How many times the inventory has to turnover in a year varies from industry to industry. And these kind of ratios are available. Somebody else. These kind of ratios are available from the balance sheets also. Balance sheets of companies which are there, they're available. And a company which is able to turn over inventory more number of times obviously incurs less costs and obviously makes more money or profits. So that is a better company than somebody who is not able to turn over the goods. In fact, one of my first jobs after doing my MBA was with a company which was having, in a particular product line. Of course, they had 50 plus products. Then I was put in charge of one product, and I found that the most inefficient operations which were going on because of this kind of all this bullwhip effect, the wrong kind of forecasting coming from, because it goes from the company to the branch offices to the depots to all that, all over 22 plus odd depots they had at that time, and now of course they'll be having many more, and inventory lying all over the place. And in fact, I took this up as a challenge, and in 2 years' time, I was able to double the turnover and half the inventory. Now, if you ask me what is the effect of this, that means the inventory turnover has been made 4 times, has become 4 times better, which was a great thing. A product which was supposed to be the worst performer suddenly is being being noticed by the top management. So this is what you can do with proper planning, right from your forecasting to master production schedules to operations to inventory to supply chain management. Inventory turnover is what is the main thing. That is what, from almost 1:1 inventory, is in the same case what I'm telling, in two years time, it became 4:1. 4 times meaning 4 turnover and the inventory was 1. So that's the level of change which was possible. And definitely a lot more could have been done also. But then by the time I changed my job, right? And yeah. So requirements of effective inventory management. First, you need to track the inventory. You should know where are all the inventory lying and assign costs to the inventory, right? In case of raw material which has not changed any form or no processes which have happened, the cost of the raw material is the cost at which you purchased, right? Whereas when there is a partial work done on it, then you assign certain cost to it to make it a work in process. And through the entire pipeline, right from the raw materials to the finished goods, where are all the inventories lying, at what quantities, in what stages? is something you need to keep track of. Then make a decision, knowing the inventory available, then you have to make a decision how much to order and when to order for the inventory. It is in case of ordering externally. See, as I told you sometime earlier, that there is a concept of internal customer and an external customer. So in internal supplier and an external supplier, let us put it that way also. External supplier is your vendor. So unless you place an order on the vendor, giving him sufficient time, which is what we call as a lead time, including the time required to be transported to you, to reach you. So this whole thing becomes an order. In fact, my manufacturing unit is in Mysore. I have only one item. Of course, there are many items which are imported. One local item. I have a vendor in Calcutta, mind you. You may say why, and it was a C-class item actually. I was relying on that customer because his quality was excellent and he understood the entire process, and I could develop him as a excellent vendor. And the component also, it is a C-class item, but it means a lot to the quality of the product. Now, one thing is he has a cycle time for production because he starts manufacturing only after I place buying the steel and then processing it, then pressing it, electroplating, polishing, many other things. Okay, so let us say he takes 1 week's time. From there, when he sends, it takes about a week to 10 days for me to reach from Calcutta, which means that I must give him clearly 3 weeks time for me to get. So my lead time for ordering will be, so I must estimate that I must reorder when at least I have 3 to 4 weeks of material available with me. Correct. So this is a decision we have to do, but it is not the same as for another item which is available, let us say from Bangalore, and it comes overnight. It gets door delivered, and it's not even 24 hours in most of the cases, and that's a continuous process which is going on. And I, being a preferred vendor, if I place an order within 48 hours, he's able to deliver. So in this case, my total lead time is, let us say, 3 days. And of course, in India, we have many holidays and so many things coming. Let us say 1 week. I will take it as a week. So some item which is 1 week and some items which can be 3 to 4 weeks time. How much to order and when to order are key decisions in inventory management. Hence, it is needed that there must be a system to keep track of the inventory on hand. Now, this could be manual, it could be automated. We'll see how organizations keep track. Well, in our case, the kind of inventory, there are only limited items of inventory. And as I said, limited number of processes. And we could not afford a very elaborate inventory management system. Although we had an excellent ERP, but did not include inventory. So we used to keep track of it manually by certain statements which come on every day, at least kind of thing, or weekly statements or monthly statements by the different process owners. So that way we were able to keep track of the inventory. Reliable forecast of demand that includes an indication of possible forecast errors. This forecast obviously comes from the customer end or the sales and marketing end. Knowledge of lead times and lead time variability. Just like I gave you this example now. Lead times is, you have to take into account the supplier's processing time, supplier's delivery or logistics time to reach you. Sometimes you That is where the supplier, as I say, suppose there is a heavy shortage of steel that is going to happen because of some problems happening in some of the steel manufacturers. And I know that this is the grade of steel my vendor from Calcutta is using. It is worthwhile sometimes for me to at least keep in the back of the mind that something like this is going to happen in that steel industry, which may possibly take about, let us say, 2 to 3 weeks to get resolved. I may order 2 months of requirement instead of 1 month requirement, right? Because I know that somewhere there is going to be a lead time problem because of the ripple effect on the other side. So knowledge of lead times and lead time variability, reasonable estimates of inventory holding costs, ordering costs, and shortage costs. We'll briefly get into this a little later. Inventory holding cost obviously means that the materials are lying and then there is a money involved in that. Ordering costs every time involves manpower and many other resources which goes into ordering. And shortage cost is the cost of uh, not being able to produce or process at that stage where the raw material entry is. A classification system for inventory. We'll also look at this. The inventories are classified into ABC, XYZ, BD, like that. There are many systems of classification. What is relevant to your product, and this is what we need to see. Inventory counting systems, as we said in the previous one, the recording of the inventory is very important. So it could be done periodically by a physical count system. Like in our case, as I told you, there are daily reports, weekly reports, and monthly reports. And in a daily report, some of the A class items inventory has to, keeps getting projected. In the weekly report, A and B class items are given, and in a monthly report, A, B, and C are given. So this is how I was managing. Very simple. So that I know what is the inventory of different items in at any given point of time, and when do I need to reorder based on the lead times which may be constant, may not be constant, due to factors which may not be in your control. So it could be a physical count, or it could be a perpetual inventory systems that keeps track of removals from inventory continuously and thus monitoring current levels. See, like in the example I gave you, we talked about, say, 5 or 6 major inventories and 5 or 6 processes. In complex manufacturing systems, there are hundreds and thousands of items which are there in stock at a given point. And the manufacturing processes may have 15, 20 kind of different stages. And in each stage, different parts and different assemblies are different components, different consumables are needed. Now, it is impossible, meaning, of course, at least it is not recommended to keep a physical count in these places. One human error can bring the entire system to a halt. So there is, people keep track of it in a perpetual inventory system, whereby the moment something is removed and sent to that, it is recorded, and it is recorded online, at least on a 24-hour basis, if not on real time. You get to know what are all the inventories lying where and what are the current levels. Of course, today it is possible by using either a barcode or a RFID tags. Of course, your QR codes, many other things are there available. And if you have a software which supports many of these things, where the inventory is lying. and what is the balance available in whatever, in wherever it is, and the same inventory is in what all stages and where all it is lying. There are other simple methods which used in practice, even in stores. And this happens in many organizations. They use what is called as a two-bin systems. Now, in a two-bin system, the first bin usually becomes the second bin once the second bin becomes empty. Well, let's put it that way, very simple. The level of quantity in that will be equivalent to the buffer stock and the stock which is needed till the replacement material reaches there. See, in many companies, it is not just that the materials comes directly to the shop floor. You see, usually what happens is whenever there is a material input inflow, then there is a inward quality inspection, which may take sometimes 2 days, 3 days, even 1 week, depending upon the type of material which arrives. Then it is inwarded. Usually it is called as a goods receipt note, or we call it a GRN. And only then it gets reflected in the system as inventory available for use. Till then, even this process inside the organization is also takes that much time to do that. So this two-bin system has to ensure that the first bin has enough stock to cover the time required for all these. Many of the things they follow this. For certain types of inventory, not for all the inventory. There's a certain normal inventories, recurring, commonly used, two-bin system is very useful. Periodic checks can happen in either very C-class items could be, or items of very high value also. This periodic, as I told you, in my case, I was having some of the items which were reflecting on everyday report, some weekly report, some in a monthly report. So that could be a periodic check system. So in a two-bin systems contain the two containers of inventory, reorder when the first one is empty. That's a very simple thing, keeping track by using a universal barcode system. Today, very lot of people use this. Many high-value items. In fact, I remember in one of the jewelry manufacturers, they used to use these RFID systems to know, to not only keep track of what is going where and all that, So RFID systems are used. And today we also have, like barcode, we also have the QR code, which is there. The point of sale systems, you have seen in retail outlets, like whenever you go, the billing is done by barcode, running the barcode onto that machine, and then it gets billed. Now it simultaneously reduces the inventory. See, that's what happens there. In many of these places, it ensures that there is a corresponding inventory management. There can be a small error in it. In fact, in retail, they call it leakage. And for your information, this leakage includes theft also. You see, theft usually happens from sometimes by customers, sometimes by the staff also, right? In fact, one of the managers of Metro Cash and Carry, he was also from IIM Bangalore, the chief guy there. So once it happened that they had not billed me for an item, electrical item, household item, costing about 1,800 rupees or something. I also didn't see, meaning that there was a lot of items that they purchased in the cart. And this happened in Bangalore, Kanakpura Road metro. I've already reached Mysore because I just loaded it into the car, reached Mysore. Then I saw that this has happened. Now I don't go. I used to go at that time once a week to Bangalore. Next time I took the invoice, took this item, and told Mr. Kapoor, see, how is it this has happened? Of course, I have not paid for it, so I'm going to pay for it. But I want to know how it has happened. In spite of you having such an elaborate system. And then, of course, there is a CCTV camera. So he got that CCTV camera for that day. We saw the whole thing. It was just a human error. Now, I'm coming from the inventory point of view. Now, this is a consumer durable. Now, of course, they may not be having hundreds of such brand for that particular model. They may be having maybe 10 of them. That means it is showing 10, whereas the stock actually is only 9 because of something like this which is happening. Smaller items usually get pilfered, and so there is a leakage. So they have what is called as a leakage factor. 1%, 2%, they'll take into account a leakage factor also into such cases. So point of sale systems are ones which record as you do a billing, as you do go for the next stage, or whatever. It could be on an online also. Inventory planning of independent demand items. Finished goods and spare parts typically belong to independent demand items in manufacturing organization, which we saw, because you do not know when and how the demand is created. Two attributes that characterize and distinguish independent demand items, that the timing of the demand items have a continuous demand, and the uncertainty of demand, there's a considerable element of uncertainty in the demand in case of independent demand items. As I said, it could be seasonal, it could be many factors. So what needs to be addressed is how much and when. The same thing what we saw earlier. Types of inventory, seasonal inventory, we have seen this. Decoupling inventory, complexity of production control is reduced by splitting manufacturing into stages and maintaining inventory at these stages, the buffers, what we called cyclic inventory, periodic replenishment using cyclic inventory, pipeline inventory. This is the inventory which is not lying in your premises, but which has been dispatched. See, it is the concept in inventory is very simple. The moment your vendor, let us say, has invoiced the product to you and handed it over to a transport partner, let us say, the goods become yours, right? So that is taken as your goods, and then that becomes your pipeline inventory. So in many big companies, you will see, especially during year end, March 31st. In India, of course, March 31st is the year ending. They will very clearly tell all vendors not to dispatch 1 week before, because they want that in their accounting system to reduce this pipeline entry or at least keep it zero, so that all the items which are received before 31st March when the physical inventory is taken or accounted, and there is no pipeline inventory. Safety stocks used to absorb fluctuations in demand. Now, is typical example of time versus quantity. If you see, there is a safety stock which is kept to take care of some of the unforeseen circumstances which can happen. Then there is a pipeline inventory, which is there yet to receive at your premises. And the cyclic stock is the maximum stock plus pipeline inventory, and it keeps reducing over time, getting replenished, getting replenished that way. So these are typical simple example. So cyclic inventory, pipeline inventory, and safety stocks are critically linked to how much and when decisions in inventory planning. Coming to costs, the carrying costs, because as I told you, the borrowing for inventory is done out of working capital. And working capital has usually a higher interest than term capital. So interest on short-term borrowers for working capital. Some of the private companies, sometimes even they borrow from the market for when there is a seasonal demand going up. So that time the interest rates is much higher also. What is called as the market borrowings. So cost of stores and warehousing costs. Warehousing costs, the storing plus sometimes it could be a cold storage. So that means cold storage costs, manpower costs, movement costs, all that it comes into the picture. Administrative costs relating to maintaining and accounting, insurance costs, costs of obsolescence, pilferage, damage. Most of the goods in any of these businesses are insured. So there is a cost of insurance in it, right? Obsolescence, because when the model changes or the technology changes, you are left with. So we do take a periodic check every year. What are all these items which are non-moving? In fact, the bank also insists on that. What are all the stocks which they are very clever? They would, the moment you take an inventory sheet to them report, they'll be the first one to see what are all the non-moving items, and they will remove it from the borrowings to you, and then you are stuck with it. Pilferages, damages, as I told you, this all leakages, as we can call, all these costs are directly related to the level of inventory. Ordering costs, search and identification of appropriate sources of supply. This is a big subject by itself, what we call as a vendor management. Because starting from identifying vendors, alternate vendors, that is a very costly process. Not many do it actually. But big companies do it all the time. Price negotiations, contracting and purchase order generation, follow up on receipt of material, eventual stocking in the stores after necessary accounting, as I said, inward inspection, vendor quality, all that, verification. A large quantity or order quantity will require less number of orders, etc. To meet a known demand. How, suppose, do you order, let's say you have 10,000 is a total order requirement. Do you order, say 12,000 to be on the thing? Do you order 1,000 per month, or you order 3,000 every quarter? That kind of decisions which you need to take. Setup costs. These are the costs. Suppose some of these parts or some of the accessories is made in-house. Now you may not have a separate assembly line for that, and you may need to set up those, which is these costs are similar to the ordering costs. So cost of carrying and cost of ordering are fundamentally two opposing cost structures in the inventory line planning. One is when one decreases, the other increases, basically. Shortage costs arising out of pushing the order back and rescheduling the production. Rush purchases. Suppose you want urgently. In fact, this happens that there is always a, if you see in many organizations, they will have one firefighter kind of a thing in the purchase department. Something is not there, he is the one to go on source and get it immediately, But then this costs money, because this fellow probably will be using all the resources, costly resources to buy, and buy at a much higher price in the market. So rush purchases, uneven utilization of available resources, missed delivery schedules leading to customer satisfaction. That is one of the shortage costs. The effect of shortages are vastly intangible, but it needs difficult to accurately ABC classification. This is one of the most commonly used classification, which says that, let us say 15% of the units items has 70 to 80% of the value. Now, sometime earlier we talked about that Pareto analysis. No, it is something like that. Class B items, 30% of the units having about 15% of the value, and the remaining 50 to 60% having only 5 to 10% of the value. It is like, let us say, nuts and bolts and fuses, like in electrical thing. These are very small value items. But you cannot do without it. If you don't put the fuse there, that equipment won't work. But so generally people will tend to play safe on the, when it comes to C-class items, So in an example here, there are 10 parts, and these are all the unit costs. And the annual usage in quantity, let's say, are this. Just a table like this. Now, what I am doing is finding out the total value of those particular part number by multiplying the cost versus the quantity. So the total cost is, let us say, this much. Percentage of all this, if I take, then I can see that roughly it follows like this. So let us say 15 items, part number 9, 8, and 2 forms about 15%. Items 1, 4, 3 forms about 40%, and the remaining 4 forms the balance 100%. If you see, so the classification could be that first 3 items are A-class items, next 3 are B-class items, and the next 4 are the C-class items. Whereas if you see here, the C-class items totals only about 10,700 out of 85,000. Right. So roughly these are the kind of class A items forms about 15% of the quantity and 71% of the value. B class items 25% of the quantity, 16.5% of the value, and C class items 60% of the quantity and 12.5% of the. This is roughly what we call as an ABC classification. It can be plotted in a curve like this also, if you see, for you to see. If you see in the case study which you have given, they have talked about this ABC classification, correct? If you're seen that the company is following ABC classification. Frankly speaking, it's not a well-written case. It is not definitely not a well-written case. But at least to give you an idea of what is actually happens in organizations, I think that will give an, and it's quite latest also, 2018, case. Okay. What is the time now? Okay, I'll give you a 5-minute break after this one. Okay, this slide. Different types of inventories are ABC classification, what we saw here. There could be a classification called, you can call it XYZ classification based on the unit cost of the item. A high unit cost can be X class, medium could be Y, and low unit cost could be Z. This could be a form of classification. FSN classification systems, fast moving, slow moving, and non-moving. That could be a type of classification. This probably more useful in retail and medical supplies. It could be, you could talk about in a pharma, could be even in a hospital for that matter, what is needed, correct. So, but in this case, a non-moving item could be a very expensive item also. It could be need to be stored, but then it is needed when it is critically needed. You see, So this classification can differ upon the application which you are doing. There is another classification which could be called VED, or vital, essential, desirable. Right. This again could be, you can apply it to any of the, whether it is a manufacturing or a hospital or a hotel or pharmacy shop or a retail. I said depends upon the type of how you classify the inventory and how important it is for you to make sure that that statement which we said, reasonable level of customer delivery. That is what is on the basis of the source of supply. So like in our case, we had a few items which had to be imported necessarily, which is not available locally. So we used to look at it as local. We used to have this classification: imported, indigenous, national supplier, indigenous, local suppliers. Like packing materials and many items of parts used to be local suppliers. Certain critical raw materials, whether it is sometimes A classification or C classification, but then got from within the country and imported. In fact, we were using this classification: imported, indigenous, and indigenous local suppliers. And within that, of course, you can also do a ABC classification within that. That is possible. Okay. So we will take a break now. 7:23. Okay. 7:30 we meet. 7:30. Okay. So first thing is, I want you to talk about the case for 5 minutes and then we proceed. These are all mathematical models after this. Okay. Right. I will also take a break. Time out. 7:30 on the clock.
Sapan.
ये बोले तुम जाने वाले हैं नहीं, अभी इतना ड्रामा चल रहा है।
Source.
गार्गल कर रहे, गार्गल कर, इतना बोलना तो तुम लोग।
शशिकांत प्रसाद.
गुड इवनिंग सर. गुड इवनिंग सर.
गुड इवनिंग. थोड़ा लेट हो गया आज.
सर एक्चुअली घर में शादी का मैरिज फेस्टिवल चल रहा घर ही में.
ओहो. तो आप छुट्टी लेना चाहिए था.
और उसके बाद से हम लोग का एनएबीएच का ऑडिट भी चल रहा था सर.
हाँ.
आज लास्ट था ऑडिट हम लोग का. आज संडे को भी हम लोग गए थे. लास्ट ऑडिट था हमारा. वो ऑडिट फिनिश हो गया. और अब घर में मैरिज फेस्टिवल है तो ऑडिट के कारण मैं छुट्टी भी नहीं ले पा रहा था.
अच्छा, कितना एनसी आया?
एनसी का वो लोग डिक्लेयर करेगा 1 और 2 दिन का अंदर. 1-2 दिन का अंदर डिक्लेयर करेगा.
बट अगर आपको पहचान है तो पहले ही बोल देंगे इतना एनसी लिखेंगे हम.
नहीं वो बोल दिए हैं वो लोग कहाँ ऑब्जर्वेशन किया वो सब बोला है. तो उसके बाद हम लोगों ने बहुत सारा डॉक्यूमेंट सबमिट किया है. तो उसका फाइनली वो लोग अभी रिपोर्ट देंगे अपना. बोले 1-2 रोज के अंदर रिपोर्ट देंगे. ऐसे आज जो बोलना था बोल दिया.
वो तो फॉर्मल रिपोर्ट तो इट विल टेक टाइम.
हाँ.
बट यूजुअली एंड ऑफ द कंक्लूडिंग सेशन में वो बोल देते हैं कि these are all the non-conformance. You be prepared so that when we send the report, by that time if you are able to rectify this, then you can send the non-conformance report, fulfillment.
वो उन्होंने दे दिया. वर्बली दे दिया उन्होंने. और जो कि एनसी है जो कि हम लोग को करवाना है वो डॉक्यूमेंटेशन के साथ वो लोग बोले कि 1-2 रोज का अंदर दे देंगे. ऐसे वर्बली बोल दिए हैं वो लोग.
अच्छा, व्हाट आर ऑल द एनसीज जस्ट फॉर इंफॉर्मेशन?
एनसी हमको लगता है कि वही 25-30 के अराउंड होगा हम लोग का.
हो.
ऑब्जर्वेशन एनसी कम है उससे. तो इसी के अराउंड में रहेगा हम लोग का. अच्छा. काफी हम लोगों ने मेहनत किया इसके लिए.
वो तो करना पड़ता है एक्चुअली. आप लोग रेगुलरली करते रहे तो आपको कुछ एनसी नहीं आएगा. It depends upon how every department, sabka, because NABH obviously means all your equipments, no, lying in various places.
Yes, yes.
Not only in your labs, but then in the bedside, so many, everything, throughout the hospital.
Yes, yes, yes. ये हमारा 5th एडिशन था सर।
हाँ।
तो हम लोग से थोड़ा सा ज्यादा ही वो लोग डीपली ये किया, क्योंकि 5th एडिशन में वो लोग कुछ ज्यादा डीपली इंक्वायरी करता है सारा।
करेक्ट, वो तो है। एटलीस्ट once in 3 years they will go again do it, although as they are doing fresh audit, no?
Yes, 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 yes. यही था।
Anyway, audit is always good. Shall we start? I think Anshaj also must have come. Acha, have you? Can you just switch on your audios and videos and then just briefly discuss about the case? 5 minutes, yeah. Anshaj, you're back. Yeah. So, can you tell something about that case?
Sir, this is a case study. This is a study of inventory management at a company named Linamar Private Limited.
Yeah.
It's a multinational company, and its India office is based in Pune.
Right.
And
basically, they are automobile ancillaries, basically.
Yes, sir. It produces automobile components such as cylinder blocks, drivetrains, gear assemblies, and such.
Yeah.
So it was found that when it comes to inventory management, this company follows a few methods, such as this EOQ, economic order quantity.
Right.
That is the ideal order the company should have, or the ideal quantity that the company should order, so as to minimize its inventory cost.
Right.
And other than this, it also follows this ABC analysis, and also maintains a safety stock to mitigate or to handle events when there is an increased demand.
Increased demand, stockouts, whatever.
Sir.
Yeah. No, roughly the finding of in that case is that the people who had studied this, one of the person is an MBA from a university, and the other person I think is a academician or something like that. I think I saw that name, Salonke something. Basically, it's a factual report, but then it just to give you the actual figures and the feel of the product. They are doing an ABC analysis of their inventory, main inventories which are there. That is number one. And they are following a economic order quantity, EOQ model for reordering, roughly based on the facts and figures which are available. 3 years statement is there. In fact, in that itself, again, they said that initially when they started, the inventory turnover was very bad. Meaning 1:1 is considered the worst possible, actually. Some of the government organizations have better inventory control than that. Okay. But by the third year, they could reach some 3 point something, which is definitely much, much better. But it can do much more, for a private organization. Okay, so that is what the case is about. To give you a feel of what is actually happening. And it's an actual case, and it's a very recent case. And it's a very short case, so that a study of that. All the key words which we are using here, they're all appearing in that. Okay. So just to give you an actual feel. Now, we'll just look at, I'm not going to go very deep because a lot of things right now, most of them are mathematical. We'll look at the concepts, and as I told you, as usual, I'll send you the PPT, which you can then go through later. Okay. Because if it is an actual classroom, we can take a blackboard and then start writing and all that and take actual figures and do it. But since we are doing an online and then our time is limited, we'll do whatever best we can. Okay. So in the EOQ is economic order quantity, basically. Okay. The demand during a planning period. So is, let us say, the planning period, let us say quarter, or it could be half yearly, it could be yearly, it could be monthly, whatever. Okay. Order quantity is Q. D is in numbers usually. Q is in the quantity in numbers again. The cost of ordering per order during in that. Suppose you take on 1 year, planning period is D. Order quantity, total order quantity, which comes from the material resource planning, what we saw initially for the year, that is Q. Then the quantity of the cost of the order and the inventory carrying cost per unit time frame is the cost of order, let us say, is CO. Inventory carrying cost is CC, let's say. The average inventory carried by an organization will be Q by 2, that is order quantity. Whatever is being decided, we are not still decided. The Q divided by 2. Assuming a linear consumption again, of course, which mostly will be most of the cases. The cost associated with carrying the inventory will be Q by 2 into the inventory carrying cost. Right. Then the total ordering cost is given by D by Q, demand by the order quantity, into cost of ordering. It's a no-brainer. It's simply. So total cost of the plan, that is of order, is equal to total cost of carrying inventory plus the total cost of ordering, and that is equal to total cost quantity is Q by 2 into CC, what you saw here, plus this. That is the total inventory carrying cost plus cost of ordering. Now, when the total cost is minimum, the idea is what, as we told initially, that the entire game in manufacturing or any operations is to keep the cost minimum. And about 40% of the cost in any operations is inventory. So if you are going to, this is a major chunk. So even if you are able to reduce, say, by 10%, you can reduce the cost by that much. And the second game in the inventory is to turn over the inventory that many times. 2 ways of doing it. So when the total cost is minimum, we obtain the most economic order quantity by taking the first derivative of the with respect to the Q and equating it to 0. We can obtain the economic order quantity. Of course, this is using a differentiation, delta TCQ by delta Q equal to, of course, I don't know, you must have done differentiation and integration, in the college, whatever it is. Okay, so CC by 2 minus CO demand by Q squared. So the idea is to, let me directly go to the graph there. It will be, see, this is the graph. Okay, we'll go to the graph, which says that level of inventory, what you are carrying with respect to the cost of inventory. If your level of inventory, the cost is very high, this is the total cost of ordering. If there are more orders, the cost will be more, obviously. Sorry, it follows this curve, and the cost of carrying inventory is more or less linear, because suppose you carry, let's say, the whole year's inventory, it will be somewhere here. And if you're carrying, let us say, week to week order, it will be somewhere here. So it's a linear equation. Again, assuming that your production or operations is linear. Okay. So the minimum cost will be, if you plot both together, you get the sum of the two costs is plotted this way, a parabolic thing. And the minimum at the meniscus of this is the minimum cost. And this is the quantity which is the economic order quantity. As we have seen, those simple equations which are already there will give you that for each one of the items which you do. And that is exactly what was done in that example which they showed. They showed the total cost of those 4, 5, 6 items which are there and said they're more or less following the economic order quantity. Now, let us assume that even after calculating the economic order quantity, you may have other variables like, okay, when it comes to some of, like in my component, you can't order 89, you have to order multiples of 100. Okay. That is what the condition imposed by the seller. So your EOQ may be 89, but then because the condition you have to order 100. Okay. Now another condition I may put saying that if you order 200, the price is this. If you order 200, this is the price. If you order 500, this is the price. Now, what would you do as a purchase guy? One is you have calculated the economic order quantity. And having calculated, you'll go to the nearest 100. Okay, then see, okay, what is the frequency of the order? Suppose the frequency of the order is every week and the supplier is giving you a better price for ordering 2 weeks at a time. Okay, let's assume that, which is say 200. And that offsets the inventory carrying cost. Ordering cost reduces because instead of 2 orders, you're placing 1 order. Inventory carrying cost is slightly going up because you're carrying. Now, then again, you calculate and see that which gives you a better advantage. Now, this is what most purchase guys will do. They will outweigh the economic EOQ. And today, most of these are available in your algorithms which are there, built upon your ERP systems. See, all these today are driven by ERP systems. ERP systems will give you most of these in their own calculations, but that you can't purely go by what is given here. After getting this figure, then you'll have to weigh many other things which are there in terms of external influences for the purchases. Okay. Maybe the carrying cost, that is your logistic cost, may be much higher. There is a lower quantity, which sometimes may become substantial, right? So there are many factors which you need to take into account even after doing this exercise. That's what I was trying to tell you. The assumptions in this model is the demand is known with certainty. Demand is continuous over time. There is an instantaneous replenishment of items, which actually does not happen, as you see, items, even after you get it into your organization, the inward goods verifies it. I'm sure even in hospitals they will do, it is not taken directly because, there is a sampling done, there is a check done. In some items, there may be a lab test also, which if it is needed to be done, unless it is from certified quality. Then the items are sourced from outside supplier, assumptions about quantity. There are no restrictions on the quantity that we can order. It usually does not happen. There are no preferred order quantities of the items, as I told you, 89, 100, 200, that kind of things. No price discount is offered when the order size is large. See, as I told you, for 100, there is a price, unit price. Then for 200, it may be less by 10% or so, which could be a substantial saving, So these are all the assumptions in the model. That is, you work out and then also take all these into consideration when you decide on the EOQ. So despite this, the EOQ model could be applied with suitable modifications because it's a robust model. All right. As I told you, most ERPs today are able to work out your EOQ model for all the items based on the data which is available in the system. And that is the way it is done. Assumption 3, 4, 5 can be addressed with required modifications. Of course, these are manual decisions which you have to take. Right. Relaxing assumption 1 will result in shortages due to difficulty in estimating demand. Okay. Estimation of safety stock. This is taken from some empirical data for an analysis. Demand during lead time. This frequency demand exceeding cumulative percentages. Some data which is given, frequency which is plotted, and I'm not getting much into. What is the right safety stock? That is to take into taking into account this lead time. Average demand during lead time is this. Service levels, again, there are other complications which can say if you want 100%, then the stock level will go very high. What is required for that particular item, and if this 90% good enough, then it could be 203. When 95%, it will go up by that much. So these are things which taken into account. Normal distribution curves, there is a mean and standard deviation. The curve is like that. So safety stock is taken, sorry. So this is the safety stock taking into account 90% level. If it is 95%, then it will probably increase by that much. 100%, of course, it goes quite very high. So continuous review systems. This you see is the safety stock here. I'm not able to take the cursor there. Here. This is the safety stock. Mean demand during lead time. And see, because it is mean, like in this cycle, it has dipped into the safety stock. This is the lead time from the time it is ordered to the time when the material has come. Here. So inventory position and physical inventory are plotted. This is a different system called the P system, in which you work comparison between the Q and P systems. Anyway, I'll just not go deep into it. You can go through, and if you need, I can give you inventory planning models, economic order quantity, mean of the weekly demand, standard deviation of weekly demand, unit cost of material, ordering cost is this much, carrying cost is 20% per annum, lead time for procurement 2 weeks, then you time between orders is this much, EOQ is this much. So you get a EOQ and frequency of ordering. So using EOQ as a fixed order quantity, Q system can be designed as follows. As the inventory level in the system reaches this, place an order for 400 units. This will ensure in the long run a service level of 95%. This is what you are working out to for one item. Mind you, in an organization where it may have hundreds of items, this is what the SAP, you heard of SAP? The ERP systems, which I'm sure some of the hospitals, I told you, Gangaram and all that, they work on SAP. See, because you can't physically manage such large companies, So these ERPs work on these kind of systems. They give you alerts basically, and some of them for C-class items, there is an order automatically going out. And today, a lot of things are happening where it is delivered onto, exhibited to the vendor, and the vendor takes it from there as an order and then starts delivering. So these are all the kind of things you work out. So this is okay. So that's it. That is the mathematical part of it. As I told you, I will not get too much into detail because again, you may have different understanding of the people at the statistical methods. So that is what it is. Anyway, I'll be sharing this with you. You can go through, and if you have any of these things, you can ask me. But all these are background algorithms which are worked in the, on the ERP systems, inventory management, especially the module. So chapter highlights, will just coming back to this. Every organization carries 5 different types of inventory: cyclic stock, pipeline inventory, safety stock, decoupling inventory, and seasonal inventory. Inventory planning is done in order to minimize the total cost of the plan. As I said, the game is always to reducing the total cost. But that is what is a penny earned is a penny, is the profit here. So the cost includes cost of carrying inventory, cost of ordering, cost of shortages. The key decisions in any inventory planning scenario is to answer how much and when to order. These are the key decisions in inventory management. The EOQ model is useful for inventory planning in the case of multiple period deterministic demand situation, as we saw in that example, which we earlier. The EOQ model is a robust model. There's two is thing. To robust to model parameters and could be suitably modified to incorporate some real life situations such as quantity discounts and non-zero lead time for supply. You could also have a situation where a vendor may say that if you give me this much premium, the delivery will come down to, I can take out from a particular stock and give it to you. See, it has happened to me from the other side, from the sales side, I have done that. I could get a premium of almost 50% in one particular order when I could bring down the lead time for a capital goods from 3 months to 15 days. And for that person who got this, actually he saved a lot. I know that. But as a company, I got a premium of 50%. See, this kind of situations happen here also, that a person is able to give you, a better lead time or a much higher discount if your order quantity is this much, kind of thing. So these decisions, you have to take. Service level is a useful concept for modeling inventory planning in the case of stochastic demand. Safety stocks can be built commensurate to the desired service levels. A fixed order quantity. See, here again, when it comes to the service levels, as it is said, the Japanese system of just-in inventory, which you have seen, that works on very high understanding between the vendor and the supplier. I have worked for about 4 weeks in a Japanese plant. Not very much, but about 4 weeks, 4 weeks and I've seen how the supplier vendor relationships are there. And I was quite surprised when I asked, when is this coming? You have the supply only for today. Tomorrow morning, you don't have the material for. He says, no, my sister company will supply. He'll bring in the morning, before the shift starts, he will come and deliver. He's saying so confidently, and it does happen. And when he said sister company, I asked him, what do you mean by sister company? Meaning that means it is your own company. He says, no, we consider all our vendors as sister companies. They are committed to us. The level of confidence and trust, you can see, when you build in that kind of a thing, then this just-in-time inventory and your safety stock, all that it can be kept to a minimum. So a fixed order quantity or a continuous review system of inventory planning and control is useful for B class and C class items. Okay, because there you can afford to stock a little more and make sure that you don't have a stock out. A popular application of the continuous review system in organization is a two-bin system that we saw earlier. That's a very popular system. Even in households we follow. Why talk about that? Like I am in charge at my house to get coffee powder. So I have, I buy half a kg of coffee powder every time. Okay, I don't know, in South, we brew coffee every day. We make from that. We don't use the Nescafe. We have the powder and percolate it, and then fresh aroma coffee. In the morning. That's something which we need. So what I do is I buy half a kg. I ask him to split it into 2 packets and give me. So, and I store it in a particular place. The moment I take out the second, I go and buy the next 2 packets within that week. So it's already a flag put in. That week, of course, the usage time is about 2 weeks, but within that week I buy. Then it makes sure that I don't get a stock out at any given point of time. Of course, many housewives follow these very simple, two-bin systems, and yeah, that's a very easy way to handle inventory. Fixed or order interval or a periodic review systems or the P system is useful for planning and controlling high value and A class items. Like I told you about my guy giving me daily stock kind of thing and weekly stock, so that I know very clearly that what is the level. Because suddenly if the consumption has gone up during that week due to higher production or something like that, we may land up in a stock out situation. So periodic fixed interval review is very important in high value items. Selective control of inventories is achieved through alternative classification methodologies. We talked about ABC, which is the most common. VED. What is VED? So we saw.
Sir, it's
Subir, what? Huh?
Sir, it's when you, it's based on the criticality of items, sir.
No, what is VED stand?
Sir, vital and essential.
Why? Desirable.
Desirable.
Desirable. So XYZ. XYZ is a most costly, medium costly, low value. Yeah. ABC is a different. ABC is number of items having the total value of the things. But see, I'll tell you one thing. I use an item called palladium chloride. It's just 1 gram in one of my processes. Very difficult to get, very costly. So if I go by ABC standard, but the usage is very less. So if I go by ABC classification, this will go in C class item. I would rather do a XYZ clarification for that, in such a case. That's what I said. I use mostly XYZ because the numbers are limited. Certain items are very expensive. And so I use that. Plus, of course, then there you have another classification which we saw was imported, local, national, local, local. Many companies again follow that system, and I used to follow a combination of XYZ and that imported local classification. The news vendor model is useful for inventory planning in case of single period demand. Of course, that's a very, we call it the milk run news vendor, the different things. Okay. So we come to the end of the inventory management. Any questions before we close? So see you. You do one thing, you go through the case again now that you have done this. Okay. This I'll send you. It will give you the, a lot of things you may be able to recollect the way it is done. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you, Subir. Thank you, Anshul.
Okay, sir. Welcome.
Have a great weekend. वो किसका शादी में जाने का कौन अंशल जब
No, sir.
अभी संडे इवनिंग एंड शादी मजा करो अभी राइट ओके बाय
Okay, bye, sir. Good
Bye,
night.
sir. Bye. Good night, sir. Good night.
राइट गुड नाइट
Good night.
Good night, sir.
Swapan Kumar. How do I get out of this? How do I exit here? Stop share. Okay.